I was born in Bombay, partly brought up in Bombay, and then partly brought up in my mum's home in Rajasthan. So it's called Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan. It's on the border there. One of my uncles had a hotel. Very traditional, very old-fashioned. You had to go to the dining room for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner. There was no room service except, I think, maybe morning tea. And he had a very fine kitchen, actually. Very classical British, very British. And I used to spend a lot of time hanging around because I could go there on the weekend and spend the whole weekend with them. So when I went to spend the weekends, a lot of the time was spent in the kitchen. And this helped me to pick up a lot of ideas there. I mean, it wasn't a kitchen that you wanted to be part of as such. You know, you wouldn't think that that is something that I'm going to grow up doing. But it definitely triggered something off. A little bit more interest in, in whatever there was that was happening there. So I did like that, yeah. But I still wasn't sure. Not till I finished my A-levels, not till I went and signed up with in an agricultural college. And then a friend of ours took me to her college, the catering, one of the catering colleges in Bombay. That I switched like that. My first love was baking. I didn't realize that. I enjoyed baking. And I had a couple of breaks then of making cakes. I used to make cakes at home off and on and then sell it to people over Christmas and whatever. And then I got a break from a caterer who wanted to buy my cakes to sell at Christian weddings, because in India, if you go for a Catholic wedding, you get a little piece of cake to take home in a tiny little bag with a bow and something else. And I used to make all those cakes up. So, and it lasted till I joined the Taj Mahal Hotel in Bombay to train. But I would come back at night and mom and dad I would have the order ready. They'd keep all my fruit weighed out. They'd keep all my flour, my sugar sieved and ready, butter ready. And I'd come at night, 11:30, 12, make the cakes, put them in the oven, go to sleep. They'd take them out of the oven because they bake for 3.5 hours, the old-fashioned rich fruit cake. And they'd take them out in the morning. I'd wake up a little bit later, slice them up, mum would pack it, I'd be gone back to work. When you join the Taj Mahal Hotel in Bombay to train, you never realize that you would have to go into a very serious, rigorous sort of classical training. So the food was very French, European orientated in the main kitchen, and you went through the normal kitchens that you'd go through in Europe. So I started off with the soup section, went on to entremetier, which is the vegetable section, went on to the fish section, and then finally moved into the saucier section. That was your final big section. And you did stuff like gadmaje and other, because we had an Indian section, tandoor section, everything else, because it's in India. During my tenure with the Taj Group, I also trained in Switzerland. And I did a little bit more work on patisserie and confectionery, plus French cooking. Then I worked for almost a year at the Roof restaurant at the Hilton in '83, I think, and it was a completely French restaurant, which is now Galvin at Windows, And besides that, of course, a few stints with some very famous chefs in France and other places. So the whole training revolved around classical French. And when I finally realized that what have I done, the passion was more with Indian food. Because the question was, there's such a wide range there. You learnt it, you had to do it because you were there, but you never implemented it to that degree of perfection because you didn't think it was important. We were always told that French cooking was more important. And then eventually I started to concentrate more on that. And the advantage for me, I guess, as opposed to many other chefs would be, that I've had a lot of different kinds of training. I've had training in a Chinese kitchen, a Thai kitchen, and of course my own culture from my mother, which I learned a great deal from my mum, and other aunts kept asking and learning. And then the French angle. So I can always cross over, bring some, influences in, and then do them in the way I feel is right. Which is why I'm never shy of using different meats. I feel I live in Britain, I must use British as much as possible. But use very traditional British as well. not just top-end cuts, even cheap cuts that people don't understand, though they are the ones that have all the, finer flavors and intensity of texture and everything else. And we do quite a lot. We are the only Indian restaurant, for instance, I guess, who sells pork and beef and venison and God knows how many other things. But we do feature pork because there is a lot of pork consumed in India too. It's just, it's not perceived that Indians eat beef and pork. But what about all the non-Hindus that eat beef? What about all the non-Muslims that do eat pork? And then the Rajputs in Rajasthan, though they are Hindus, they'll eat the male bull. They will eat buffalo. They are great hunters, so they will eat wild boar, venison, buffalo. And my dad was a great hunter, and as a child in Rajasthan, in the house, we had pheasant, grouse, partridge, wild boar. We had a little thing called a blue bull, lots of venison, buffalo, all the time. And it's great. I used to go on hunting trips with him, and we cooked in the jungle, because you went for 3-4 days, you never came back for 3-4 days. And those things I love putting back here because I love using game. And I think game and Indian food is a marriage made in heaven. It just works because game is intense. And with the right kind of spicing, game really adds relevance to Indian cooking. Of course, these days things have to be banned in India because they've overkilled everything. But the tribals still eat. They'll eat anything. As a child I've eaten python, not knowing I've eaten python. I know that the tribals in Madhya Pradesh, just outside our village, they will eat alligator and crocodile. They eat anything that moves. There are tribes in Bihar that eat rats and mice, And people will say, but that's the way the people are brought up. And they will eat, and what is available to them. Mutton and Indian food, I think they go extremely well because the flavors are great and you can play with it. And Indian cooking is very slow, very deliberate, very much the flavors need to be drawn out. And in slow cooking, mutton is the best, like a good, great Lancashire hot pot. That's a classical korma. And that's how kormas are. That's a classical korma. And that is how one can actually start to experience mutton again and enjoy it more and more. Put some potatoes in, put some other veggies in, get better flavors out. One of the other muttons we use is probably the rarest mutton in the world and the most unique as well. Not many chefs can get their hands on it because in a year they're only allowed to slaughter 300 animals, no more than that. And this little sheep breeds on the island of North Ronaldsay, up in the Orkneys. It's a tiny little animal, very tiny. And it comes under the protection of Prince Charles because that's his duchy. And this mutton was brought in by the earliest settlers about 2,500 years ago. And when they left the islands, they left the sheep behind. And they've been breeding wild. Two unique features on the sheep, or few unique features. One is that the Duke of North Ronaldsay, because on his particular land, about 250 odd years ago, there was very sparse pastures because the islands are all rocky and there's very little grass that grows on it. He built a fence, so he won't allow the sheep to run on his estate. As a result, they then only lived on seaweed. They did live on seaweed as well, but they could grow in other parts. Now they breed primarily on seaweed and only seaweed. As a result, of course, they have got no fat on their body. There's no fat. The animal grows no bigger dressed weight at 14 kilos, maximum 14 kilos. It can only be caught on a full moon night between October and March. You are not allowed to catch them in the daytime. You're not allowed to catch them when the tide is in because that doesn't give them a chance to run. You can only catch them when the tide is out and on a full moon night. That's how rare it is. And I've already booked my quota for this year. I've booked about 50 carcasses already. With that mutton, we generally make, though we've done other things with it, we call the dish country captain. The country captain is a shepherd's pie kind of a thing that originated in the gymkhanas of India during the British Raj. Okay? The gymkhana, of course, is a very posh, very English kind of a club where the hoity-toities went and played polo and cricket, and they played cards and rummy and whatever else and bridge and discussed nothing. And the menus evolved around those gymkhanas as a mixture between British and Indian. And those were the places where the British living in India were gradually exposed to Indian flavors. And the country captain, what we do is like the old-fashioned shepherd's pie in Britain. You cook offcuts of meat down very, very, very slowly. Of course, ours has got spices in it, so it's got masala, very rich. And when it's completely cooked down, we first roast it half. Then we cook it in this masala till the meat is almost flaking off the bones. Then we strip all the meat off. We throw the bones away. All the juices that we want are in that gravy. And we reduce the gravy down till it becomes a thick goo, very thick. And then we put that in at the bottom of the dish. We put some chopped spinach tossed in garlic and cumin on top. And then we top it with egg and we bake it. Or we top it with mashed potato flavored with cumin and we bake it. Either one of the two. And it's fantastic because then you get a creamy texture of the potato or the egg on the top. Then you hit the spinach and then below that is this rich mutton. Just absolutely gorgeous. And all you want to do is to dip some bread inside and eat it. It's fantastic. Parsis are the Zoroastrians of India. They're known as Parsis because Persia in history was known as Pars. And those that came from Pars became Parsis. That's why we are known as Parsis. Gujarati is our mother tongue. The religion will survive for some more time. The community might die out because the Parsi community is shrinking worldwide. Simply because the promises we made somehow have become part and parcel of the religion. So we don't convert. We don't allow external marriage within the community. There's a lot of intermarriage which leads to a lot of complications, in genetic complications. And these are some of the things that are facing the community now, whether it should evolve, whether it should modernize itself, or whether it should stick to its, vows and continue to do what it did. So these are the things facing the community. In Iran, there are pockets spread out all over. They don't expand because in Iran they are not allowed to convert. And an Iranian Muslim cannot marry a Zoroastrian. There's a problem. Zoroastrian cannot marry a Muslim. And those are restrictions placed on the community because of where they are. And not because of the religion not accepting it there. The other thing is, of course, that so far as the group goes, there's a lot of spread out. The Parsis have always went and looked for new avenues, for business, for trade, for work, whatever it is. I mean, we were the first migrants to UK. We were the first immigrants, but never anything else but economic immigrants. The first 3 ever non-British members of parliament have all been Parsis, and they've all been leaders of different political parties. The link to Zoroastrianism, oldest link is with Judaism. In history, of course, if you look at the Bible, the 3 wise men, we know they were Persian nobles or whatever, but no, they were Zoroastrian priests. We are very carnivorous as a group. We are carnivores. Vegetables, greens are more considered in the fungus category. So we're a carnivorous community, landed in a totally vegetarian society. So we learned to camouflage our meat within our gravies and sauces and lentils, etc. And that's how things like dhansak evolved. Because dhansak is a dal. It's of course only lamb, so far as we are concerned, or mutton in India. But if you have a pot, you can't see any meat on it. All you see is the lentils. And the meat is sitting at the bottom. If a neighbor's wife came and asked, what are you making tonight? I'm making lentils. And if she had to be served some, you only served some from the top. But that was how the food evolved, really. So most of the meat dishes in our cooking have potatoes or pumpkin or okra or peas or spinach or things like that evolved. Sometimes to camouflage, sometimes to make us have that extra bit of vegetable that we needed to have. And also because it was part of the culture. Even in Iran today, you have a lot of meat cooked with spinach, meat cooked with potatoes, meat cooked with other things. Though the food is very bland, our food is more robust because it picked up Indian attributes.